What I found interesting about the Cherokee Nations versus Georgia case was that the Supreme Court didn't give a legitimate ruling. It just stated that it didn't have jurisdiction over the case and that the Cherokee Indians would first take this to a federal court case. I found that very unfair because the Cherokee Indians couldn't take it to a federal court case because they would easily be lost because the people of Georgia didn't want them in their state. What I also found interesting was that the people of Georgia didn't want them there because of greed. They didn't want them there because a few years earlier there had been a gold rush, and so the people of Georgia wanted all the gold and the land to themselves. They wanted to expand further and didn't even want to share land with the Indians anymore, much less the gold. So they just found it easier to be hostile to the Indians and force them out. And with the Supreme Court ruling that they didn't have any jurisdiction over the case, it was just like a free motive for them to even force them out, even though the Supreme Court did say that their treaty had legitimacy. The treaty that the Indians had did establish them to be able to stay in their land and not be forced out by the Georgians. But the Georgians didn't follow that, and with the President Andrew Jackson also being hostile to them, that was even more motive to push them out. And the Supreme Court couldn't do anything about it. The Indians didn't go to a federal case, which this essentially just led to the Indians being kicked out of their land, being forced out of their land, many at gunpoint, and forced to travel west to the Oklahoma Indian territories. And in the travel, the Indians called it the Trail of Tears because you could easily follow the graves as you walked and walked. More people in front of you died and died, and a quarter of the population was lost in that travel to the Indian territories. I found this as a really sad case because it's just sad to find out how many people died just because of judicial review. The Supreme Court didn't have jurisdiction over the case, and the president was hostile. Nobody wanted to obey by the treaty laws and let them live on their land, which they were entitled to.